Hello! Here are the top 10 most populated countries on planet Earth. Out of those 10 countries, 3 of them have never played in a World Cup before. So along with those 3, I decided to study up on the 5 biggest or most populated countries that have never played in the world's biggest tournament. And I guess try to let you know where it all went wrong. With a population of 117 million people, Philippines is number 5 on this list. They've been playing internationally since 1913, yet they've only qualified for one Asian Cup in 2019 and never qualified for the World Cup, obviously. The Philippines' biggest ever win was registered against currently one of the best national teams in Asia, Japan, where they defeated Japan 15-2 back in 1917, 4 years after the national team was assembled. However, their biggest defeat was also to Japan, losing 15-0 in 1967. Some reason to blame for this heavy defeat was because of the massive decline the nation experienced in football from the 50s to 90s. There was overall a huge lack of funding and received little to no coverage from the media. Being ruled by the United States for some time, the Philippines' most popular sports are basketball and boxing, making football not high in their interest. The decline was so high though that key players from the national team resigned due to these financial challenges. Some of them even switched to become professional basketball players instead. Several more challenges came into place, but attempts were made to reinstate the Football Federation. Foreign assistance from coaches, medical staff, and players were requested in order to make the national team better. But again, it all came crumbling in cycles, with some leaving due to financial reasons. The only positive thing to note is that they attempted to qualify for their first ever World Cup in 1998, but still couldn't score a single goal. 2010 onwards, though, we saw a promising hope for the nation. In 2012, the Philippines recorded their first ever win in World Cup qualification, destroying Sri Lanka 4-0. More glimpses of hope appeared, like getting their first ever away win in the World Cup qualifiers in 2015 against Yemen, and then securing their first ever AFC Asian Cup appearance in 2019. In the tournament itself, they put off a good fight against South Korea at the beginning and scored their only goal at the end against Kyrgyzstan. Although very much improving, getting 3 wins in total in the 2018 and 2022 World Cup qualification, in 2026 they already fell out of the race, getting just 1 draw and conceding 14 goals. But still, it's an improved fleet, as they've only attempted to qualify for the World Cup less than 30 years ago. There's no denying that what set this team back for so long is their lack of interest along with financial issues. But a spark has been lit in recent times, and it needs to stay alive and hopefully not fall out once again. Maybe we'll see more glory in the future. The only country in Africa we'll be looking at in this top 5 list. Ethiopia is the second most populated country in the continent, with only Nigeria in front of them. They have a population of 126 million people. Their domestic league definitely has had some interesting moments, but that's a different story. Despite never qualifying for the world's biggest stage, their early continental success was actually amazing. Obviously, the Africa Cup of Nations was much smaller back then, but Ethiopia were champions on their own home soil in 1962, the 3rd edition of the competition. But that was arguably the country's biggest achievement in the football world. As the tournament expanded, Ethiopia made less and less appearances. In fact, between 1982 and 2013, Ethiopia failed to make a single appearance at the Africa Cup of Nations. And since the tournament continued to expand 1970 onwards, Ethiopia have never made it past the group stage. Now going back to the main focus, the World Cup qualifiers, most campaigns did not end well. Some they did not even participate in, like in the 2010 campaign, as they were suspended by FIFA. But other than that, most times they did participate in World Cup qualifiers, they were able to get 1 win max. All except for the 2014 tournament. In that one, it was not the case. Ethiopia registered 5 total wins, first defeating Somalia 5-0 in 2011. And then in the group stage second round, they topped their group, consisting of previous host South Africa, Botswana, and Central African Republic. 4 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss. They actually would have been undefeated, but Ethiopia fielded an ineligible player against Botswana, awarding their opposition a 3-0 victory. It was the best Ethiopia have ever done, and they were set to take on Nigeria in the final round. However, for them, unfortunately, they lost over both legs with the 4-1 aggregate scoreline, the closest Ethiopia ever came to qualifying for a World Cup. Right now in the World Cup 2026 qualifier campaign, Ethiopia have yet to win a match in their group and are second to last. But there's still 6 more matches to play in this group stage, while they've only played 4 so far. At the same time though, at the time of this recording, they have still yet to play the group leaders Egypt. So although they are still mathematically in the race, it's not likely that we will be seeing them at the 2026 World Cup. In terms of the future though, who knows? The fact that they came so close in 2014, and with the tournament's expansion, it makes me think Ethiopia should only continue to stay hopeful for the future. In terms of all the teams we're talking about in this video, they do have the heaviest weight history in terms of prestigious continental tournaments, and the closest attempt to qualifying for the World Cup. at least properly. Moving on now to the 8th most populated country in the world and the 3rd most populated to never qualify for the World Cup. The remainder of the countries all rely on South Asia, but let's start with Bangladesh. With 172 million people, Bangladesh first became approved by FIFA in 1974. Their start to major international tournaments came quickly, with their first and only ever Asian Cup appearance being in 1980. In a group of 5 though, they finished last place with no wins, scoring a total of 2 goals and conceded 17, 7-0 to Iran and 6-0 to China. But their first ever World Cup qualifier campaign was for the 1986 tournament. In a group with Indonesia and Thailand, and being able to beat both once, they still finished bottom of the group. Although never qualifying, obviously, they still have gotten 11 qualifier wins throughout their entire history. The federation saw similar patterns throughout their attempted records, but a manager that had some decent success was Brazilian Dido in 2009. After 11 months though, he was sacked for his questionable team selections. In an interview after receiving the boot, he claimed the country's football structure was corrupt. Since his sack, Bangladesh have never seemed to have any small spurts of hope and have been on a visible decline. They failed to register a single win in all of 2024 so far. Not only that, they have yet to score a goal in 6 matches. Obviously meaning they have failed to qualify for the 2026 World Cup. Now obviously for sports, football is not the main focus in this country. Cricket is by far the most popular, and will be a similar theme for the other countries we're mentioning in this video. Pakistan are currently the worst ranked nation on this list, 197th by FIFA, meaning they are the 13th worst ranked country at football, as there are a total of 210 national teams approved by FIFA. Yet they are the 2nd most populated country in this video, with 240 million inhabitants. Now obviously, like I just mentioned for Bangladesh, football is not their main sport. Much more focus is going into cricket, although they also had their shortcomings recently. But never mind not even qualifying for the World Cup, it's still interesting how low they are in the FIFA rankings. Pakistan's most hopeful years in football were in the 60s and 70s, the same era where we saw one of their best players in history, Abdul Ghaffur, shine. He was literally nicknamed the Pakistani Pele. However, despite him and other stars rising throughout the years, Pakistan did not continuously play in continental tournaments due to financial issues within the FA. It was the same for the World Cup qualifiers. Pakistan failed to attend matches due to lack of interest from the federation and not enough support from the government. In fact, their first ever attempt to qualify for the World Cup was in 1990, where they lost all of their matches. In fact, they lost all their matches every single qualifier campaign. Until this year, yes, Pakistan grabbed their first ever World Cup qualifier win for the 2026 campaign. Despite falling short at the end, obviously, they were able to defeat Cambodia once 1-0 and drew to them the other time in the first round. It got them to the second round where they got annihilated every single match. Backtracking a bit once again, one time they were suspended from FIFA between 2015 to 2017. Due to the Football Federation president being considered incompetent, he eventually was ruled out of office. Again, the country was banned in 2021 to 2022 due to third-party influence. That same president attacked the federation's office and held people inside hostage, which is only the most recent evidence, but it's just proof that this has been an ongoing issue. The Pakistan Football Federation was very poorly run, making it unsustainable for them to be proper competitors in the football world. More proof to this is the fact that they never qualified for their own major domestic international tournament, the AFC Asian Cup. The Pakistani Pele I mentioned earlier even retired internationally because of a falling out with the secretary of the federation. So yeah, truly this federation has one of the messiest in the football world, and I'm not too hopeful we'll see them play on the world's biggest stage anytime soon. All the negativity aside, they have had one player make it to the Premier League. Aziz Rahman played for Fulham between 2003 to 2006. In recent times, the best Pakistani player for sure. We move on now to the most populated country in the world, India. Last numbers to be published are 1.4 billion people. 1.2 billion higher than our country placed at 2nd, Pakistan. Now, India have actually technically qualified for a World Cup before, but still not gone on and play. India in the 40s and 50s had one of the best football teams in all of Asia. They were set to automatically qualify for the 1950 World Cup in Brazil after the other countries in their group withdrew. But India themselves ended up withdrawing 10 days before the tournament began, as the federation could not afford traveling to both Brazil for the World Cup and then Finland for the Olympics 2 years later. Their main incentive was to prioritize the Olympics. Now back then, the World Cup was in its earlier stages and not regarded as highly as it is today. So that's the main reason why India chose to prioritize their Olympic success. At the time, fair enough, but football associations across several Indian states offered to donate for the Indian Federation's travel expenses, along with FIFA themselves, and they still ended up declining, as they still highly prioritized focusing on the Olympics. India would have been in a group with Sweden, Italy, and Paraguay, and yeah, we'll never know what results would have unfolded there. But I'll tell you what, they definitely did not make the right call to prioritize the Olympics, as they were not used to the cold weather conditions and got annihilated by Yugoslavia 10-1. Interestingly enough though, India's golden era existed throughout that Olympic failure. Despite that heavy result against Yugoslavia, their coach at the time, Saeed Abdul Rahim, had the team playing so well they were considered the Brazil of Asia. They won their first ever trophy in 1951 in the Asian Games before the Yugoslavian massacre, and after it they went on to win more minor tournaments like the Colombo Cup 4 times in a row. In 1956 they redeemed their Helsinki failure and finished 4th place in the Olympics. And then in the 3rd ever AFC Asian Cup held in 1964, India were runners-up. So throughout history, this country have seen monuments of success, especially throughout this time period. Recently they still went on to do well in these minor domestic tournaments, as the national team still had an icon who only just retired internationally recently. Sunil Chhetri was without a doubt a legend, the 4th highest international goal scorer of all time, only behind Cristiano Ronaldo, Leo Messi, and Ali Dai. Incredible goal-scoring fleet from the forward, but his latest results concluding his international career did not go to plan. The last Asian Cup, they finished their group with 3 losses, no goals scored, and 6 conceded. Given it was a very difficult group, it's still a massive disappointment for the Indian national team. And 2024 as a whole has been a disastrous year. They haven't won a single match at the time of this recording, and their most recent failures happened in the World Cup qualifiers for 2026. Their last match finishing controversially against Qatar, with the ball that looked to go out of play before scored. They finished the group with just 1 win they obtained in 2023, confirming they will not be coming to North America in 2026. Their most recent manager, Igor Stimac, who has been in charge since 2019, got his contract terminated this year following all these consecutive failures. But is it all his fault? India as a whole, just like a lot of the other nations talked about, just simply do not have grassroots. It's difficult for aspiring footballers to seek the journey to become pro, and coaching staff throughout the nation are not top tier. Obviously, like I already mentioned twice, their love for cricket will make it hard for them to prioritize their football development. But there's no denying that we have seen growth and love for the beautiful game. And there's so many fans tuning into their own domestic leagues with passionate atmospheres. India's FA also has strict rules about letting players with dual nationalities represent their country. We've seen other countries be more loose in that regard, and we have noticed more success. So hopefully one day we can finally see this country play in their first ever World Cup, but unfortunately, I don't think it's coming very soon. Now, I only went in depth through the top 5, but in case you want to know the top 10 list, Vietnam comes in at number 6, Thailand 7th, Tanzania 8th, Kenya 9th, and Myanmar 10th. Many similar themes overlapped or appeared for all these countries talked about though: corruption, financial issues, and lack of interest in the sport. But of course I could have dived in even deeper to each of these stories, so let me know any other important information you thought I missed in the comments below, or any other interesting facts about your nation if you have not qualified for the World Cup. I have another bigger video that will involve all the countries that have yet to qualify for the World Cup, so make sure you stay tuned for that by subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you haven't already, and thank you all for making it to the end. I will see you all very, very soon. Take care. Boa noite.